Hoş geldiniz arkadaşlar. Herkese iyi akşamlar. Hello everyone, welcome. Sizi burada görmek çok güzel. It's so nice to see you guys here. So, I see some new faces. Bazı yeni yüzler görüyorum. I'll make some reminders for them. Onlar için bazı hatırlatmalar yapacağım. For example, you can, watch the stream. It is important. You will see some tables with colors to show the conjugations, or you can just follow what I am talking about. There are 11 people. I think that's good enough. The others, they can join later. Okay. So, dersimize başlayalım. Let's start our lesson. And what will we do? What will we talk about today? I call it future in the past because I will explain the concept and how a future plan that was in the past is expressed in Turkish. And the suffix we are going to use is acaktı. Bu eki kullanacağız ve geçmişte kalmış gelecek planları hakkında konuşacağız. Let's see our lesson content first. Önce dersimizdeki içeriği görelim. Şu an yaptığımız gibi content'i gösteriyorum. Yani içeriği gösteriyorum. Sonra Türkçedeki temel veya basit fiilleri, basit zamanları hatırlayacağız. Ondan sonra bu konseptin ne anlama geldiğini anlatacağım. Ondan sonra daha fazla cümleler, daha fazla bağlamlar vereceğim. Sonra bazı ilginç detaylar göreceğiz. Okay, that's how we will go over these chapters in the content. But let me do something real quick. So let's talk about this. I think in English there's a similar tense with the same title. Actually, that's where I was inspired to call it future in the past. But in my words, in my way of explaining it, this future in the past means an event that was planned for the future but cancelled for some reason. This could be anything. There are a lot of contexts, a lot of situations. It could be anything. For example, you planned to go to the school, but for some reason, the school was cancelled that day. You are taking a day off, but you realize this later, or you are informed, or you were informed in the first place, but you missed the announcement. Then in the morning, you wake up. Then you say, "I was going to go to the school, but apparently, it's a day off." So that's how we express that future in the past. In Turkish, for this, I will say, okula gidecektim ama apparently görünüşe göre okul bugün tatil. I was going to go to the school, but apparently the school is today off on vacation. Okay, a different example. You planned to talk to someone about something, like at a workplace, you wanted to discuss about a work-related thing with your colleagues. Then, for some reason, you forget, or something else comes up and you get busy. Then you will say, seninle konuşacaktım. Seninle konuşacaktım. This has the implication that for some reason, I didn't talk to you. I was going to talk to you, ama unuttum, but I forget. The reason could be anything. Seninle konuşacaktım, ama unuttum. Does it also work if you cancel the plan for yourself? Yes, exactly. It doesn't matter who cancels the plan. It doesn't matter why the plan is cancelled. It is all about the fact that it was cancelled. Like you were going to do it, but you didn't for some reason. The reason is not important. I was going to bake, I was going to cook, but I realized we don't have eggs. Cook what though? We need a noun, we need a food. Like menemen, the Turkish food, Turkish recipe. Menemen yapacaktım ama yumurta kalmamış. Menemen yapacaktım ama yumurta kalmamış. I was going to cook menemen, but we have run out of eggs. We don't have eggs. The mush here indicates that I have realized that after deciding. Like I'm sitting in the living room, I'm thinking of what to cook, then I walk to the kitchen, I check the fridge, then I realize, there's no eggs. Does the tense work only as two parts? No. Hayır. Her zaman kullanabilirsiniz. Ama demek zorunda değilsiniz. You can use it every time. You don't have to say ama. So that's a good idea. To indicate this, I will put this in parentheses because the reason doesn't have to be mentioned. It could be for any reason. Okay? I added the reasons, the ama parts, only to show you the context of why the plan was cancelled. It is like cancelled, interrupted, had to be delayed. It's all, everything counts. Doesn't have to be cancelled. It could also be interrupted by someone else. And pay attention here because last week we were talking about yordu, which was another tense about something you have been doing, something you were doing, but you got interrupted. That's why we can use the acak as an alternative to express the same thing. But there are, of course, a few differences. We will talk about the differences. We will talk about the different situations in which all of these two suffixes are used differently. So, if that's clear so far, if you guys understand the concept of this, we can talk about the conjugations because I have been typing the conjugations examples myself, but maybe you are still new to the language, you want to review how to do it. We can talk and I can show you how to form this conjugation. Eğer anladıysanız, aklınızda bir soru yoksa size bu çekimleri gösterebilirim. Engin, in that case, yordu would be more appropriate. It would fit better. Okay? And yes, that's a good side note. That's important. It doesn't have to be planned. Again, I was saying like it doesn't have to be cancelled. It doesn't have to be interrupted. In the same sense, it doesn't have to be a real plan. It could be any event that was going to happen but cancelled, interrupted for some reason. Okay, so I will also include this. An event that was planned or was going to happen either way, whether a plan or not. Yes, in English it is being used the same way. The yordu example exactly the same. Sen beni aradığın zaman ben televizyon izliyordum. And acakta is also used the same way. I was going to tell you something. So the sentence template where in English they say like I was going to. That's our acaktı in Turkish. The was going to part is our acaktı. Okay? Maybe I can also quickly show you this drawing with my perfect drawing skills. if this is our timeline, the middle is present. P stands for present. So this is of course the past. The other P stands for past, and the F stands for future. So you are somewhere here, then there's an event here. Okay, so the event was going to happen, but it didn't happen. So the time kept going, the time passed, and now you are in the present. So now you think back about this event. When you think about this, initially it was a future plan, but now you are in the present. The plan is in the past. The future plan is now in the past. The future event plan doesn't matter. Is left. You left it behind in the past. So that's why you refer to it as a future thing, but you also indicate that now it's in the past. Okay? That's the logic behind it. Partiye gidiyordum ama Sezen Aksu oradaydı ve gergindim. Yeah, that works too. For yordu. So, şimdi biraz işin kural kısmından, biraz dil bilgisi kısmından bahsedelim. Let's talk about the grammar part of this instead of the meaning. What do the grammar says? How do we conjugate this meaning? This a sentence for this meaning. So, if you want to say, if you know how to say I did, this will be easy for you, because here all I am doing is inserting the ajak, because if I remove the ajak, it becomes yaptım, which means I did. But I didn't do the event. I didn't do anything. I was going to do it, but it got cancelled, interrupted. For some reason I didn't do it. And now it was a future event, future plan, but now it's in the past. So yapacaktım. I was going to do it. And same for sen. Yapacaktın. So yaptın, oops, we deleted too much. Yaptın, this means you did, but yapacaktın, you were going to do it. You will use this when you are talking about something that your friend mentioned but didn't. So you want to check and see what happened. Like, yemek yapacaktın, ne oldu? You were going to cook. What happened? Why didn't you cook? Neden yemek yapmadın? Yapacaktın. Okay, you are checking up. You're asking why they didn't do it. It also works with mış, miş, exactly. It only just adds the same meaning, like the inferential meaning. You heard it from someone else. That's why I didn't stay too much on the mış combinations. Maybe next week, when we cover all of these do and basic tenses, we can also talk about how mış is the same, just the heard meaning. But yeah, mış mış, it also works the same way. And let's see gitmek. By the way, I'm not going over all the pronouns because it can get repetitive, like you're repeating everything. You have to memorize these endings, but you can practice in your free time. For now, it is important that you understand the dynamics. O yüzden şimdilik her zamir için yaptığımız bu çekimleri okumuyorum. Gitmek hakkında konuşacağız. Ben gidecektim. Ben gidecektim. Burada bir tane önemli bir olay var. There's an important thing going on here. Does anyone Can anyone spot what's different? What's the thing going on here? And a small reminder, it's not about the subject itself, it's about the gitmek verb itself. With gitmek verb is kind of an exception. We change something about it. Yes, the D, exactly. And actually there are two D's that change here. The first one is the T in the verb stem. Birinci T ya da değişen D harfi fiilin kökündeki T harfi. Yani fiilin kökündeki T harfi çekimleme yaptığımız zaman D harfine dönüşür. The T in the stem becomes the in the conjugation. Why is that? The reason is a little bit complicated. There are a few more rules, but we call it consonant softening. There are some consonants, there are some letters in easy words. There are some letters, and when those letters get a suffix that starts with e, a, I, they soften, they change. Soften could be still a bit confusing for you because this is only softening, at least for natives. We hear it as a soft letter, but you should, if you want to, you can remember this as the T turning into D. Hayır, fıstıkçı Şahap değil. Fıstıkçı Şahap consonant hardening ile ilgili. Sonunda fıstıkçı Şahap olan kelimeler bazı ekler aldığında o ekler sertleşir. Mesela ağaç, ağaçı da demiyoruz. Ağaç ta diyoruz. Fıstıkçı Şahap bunun için. Ve burada ikinci bir T var. We have a second T here. So the suffix is the, but in other forms it could be the, but here by default it is always T. Why? Because it is always used after the future suffix, and like the future suffix has k at the end. So always, all the times, this will be gidecektim, yapacaktım, görecektim. Okay? And also I should mention that the verbs usually don't get this consonant softening. Gitmek is an exception for this. There could be other verbs that have T in them, but they won't soften. They will keep the T. Gitmek is just an exception. And next one, oynamak. There's something else. I picked the oynamak to show you. I guess at least the intermediate level can spot the difference here. Burada fazladan bir ekimiz var. There's an extra letter here. Yes, there's the Y letter here. Türkçedeki Y harfimiz var. Exactly. So if I remove this, if I remove the extra Y, it becomes oynayacaktım. Okay, you can even hear the difference. Like oynayacaktım, oynayacaktım. The buffer is to help the pronunciation. With the Y letter, with the buffer letter, the pronunciation flows more smooth. Instead of saying oynayacaktım, we say oynayacaktım. There's a flow here, like oynayacaktım sounds straight, like oynayacaktım, oynayacaktım. Okay, it changes the flow. It makes it better. Okay, so you need the buffered Y letter if the stem of the verb has a or e or o, simply in Turkish we call them sesli or ünlü harf, the voiced letters, okay, or as known as the vowels. If the verb stem has this, you need to put the Y letter. So far, this was only about the basics of conjugations. And more advanced stuff is changing the pronoun endings, changing the personal markers. Ben oynayacaktım, sen oynayacaktın. Wait, the N is gray. We need to make it yellow as well. O oynayacaktı, and yeah, there's no O. The O doesn't have any personal marker ending. It's just O oynayacaktı. And you can read and see the other pronoun endings, the other personal markers. Thanks to these personal markers, the ones at the very end, we don't always need this, like ben, sen, o, biz, siz, onlar. They are not always needed, but there are still some cases where you will use it to emphasize the subject. Like sometimes you can say oynayacaktım, but sometimes you prefer to say ben oynayacaktım, like I was going to play, or it was I, it was me. When you want to put emphasis on me, you can mention the pronoun. And finally, the onlar pronoun, like they, literally, they have three different alternatives. This one is the same as o. This one, it is basically the same, just the difference is the position of the suffixes. Sometimes, or some people may prefer saying lar, the personal marker, before the additional suffix. So all of these options are possible. Oynayacaklardı, oynayacaktılar. If you ask me, my personal opinion, just how I like it, oynayacaklardı sounds better. But there could be other native speakers who prefer the other option and may say oynayacaktılar. Okay. So this is how the conjugations work. We will make our sentences based on these basics. So I also want to show you the negative conjugations because it's important. The negative conjugations are made in two ways. With nouns we use değil, but here we are talking about verbs. And with verbs, instead of değil, we use a suffix in the conjugation. And the conjugation, the suffix could either be ma, depending on this one here, the vowel in the stem, or me, depending on this one here. For more information, you can check the vowel harmony rules. There are tons of resources on the internet. I also had a lesson on it. You can check the lesson folder. And then it also becomes ma here. And now each time it gets the Y buffer because, as you can see, like ma has a in it. When there's a, we also have the future suffix here. So this is kind of like inevitable. It becomes like a default thing. If you conjugate your verb with negative modifier, you always need the Y buffer because by default there will always be two A's next to each other. So we are also moving to question conjugations. Now this is more important than negatives. I see a lot of people still confusing how to make a question. I had a separate whole lesson on how to do questions, But just to remind you, and if you are new here, just to show you, we have two ways to form a question sentence. The first one is using a question word. I call it a word, but I think it's called a question pronoun. I'm not really sure. The question words are like ne, what, nere, where, nasıl, why, kim, who, and all the other questions. The question particle is basically the mı, mu suffix, the particle mı, mu. So let's see. When you make a question with the question particle, you just type the question particle before the conjugation. So I will go with ne, which means what. So this becomes a question now. Ne yapacaktım? What was I going to do? I can include some more notes on below the tables. Tabloların altına bazı notlar yazacağım. Ne yapacaktım? What was I going to do? Or sen ne yapacaktın? Ne yapacaktın? What were you going to do? If you change your question particle from like what to, I don't know, how you were going to do it. So the Turkish word for how is nasıl. So instead of ne, you change it to nasıl. Nasıl yapacaktım? Now this becomes how was I going to do it? Whatever is in question. Or nasıl yapacaktım? Wait, nasıl yapacaktın? How were you going to do it? Okay, and if you change your question from how, nasıl, to where, so like in which place were you going to do it? For this we have nerede. This also has a few more details in it, but just to quickly mention it, nere is the root of the question, which means where. The de includes or mentions in which, like in where. If you have a different sentence, like if you use nere in the accusative case, you will have nereyi. So you will have to change your verb. But for yapmak, it could be used in the locative case. So nerede? Nerede yapacaktım? Like in or on or at where was I going to do it? Okay? This is how you make a question with the question word. For more, you can check the question words. Ne, nasıl, nerede, kim, ne zaman, when, kiminle, with whom, neden, why, and all other words. So now let's talk about the question particle. So now things get a little bit tricky. It's not as simple as just putting a new word. It's more about putting a word, yes, but changing the endings. So I think some of you already know, but for those who don't know, when you put the question particle, which is mı, like this, which could be mı, mi, mu, mü. Now you could put this after, this is important, after the conjugation. Yapacaktım plus mı. From these options, I need mı because in the conjugation, the last vowel is ı. After ı, I need ı. But I still didn't modify them. I can't say yapacaktım mı. I have to change the endings. So what I'm going to do is just moving this, transferring it here, moving the endings. So it becomes yapacak mıydım. Now you see the d here with the y. There's a reason for this, but I don't want to go into the history of it. I want to just say the other alternative, the outdated alternative yapacak, or like mıydım. In all books you can see it this way, but in the modern Turkish we say yapacak mıydım. Okay, and different alternative or different example. Let's use biz. Biz yapacağız or yapacaktık plus mı. I use mı again, but this time yapacak mıydık. You move the endings, the tık ending here. You modify it, but of course, now that there's no K before it, it goes back into its original state. It goes back to the. Yapacak mıydık? Okay, so making conjugations is all about knowing the rules and building your suffixes one upon the other one by following these rules. Yapacak mıydım would mean was I going to do this? The answer to this is yes or no. Yes, I was going to do it. No, I wasn't going to do it. So it will be was I going to do it? And the answer will be yes, I was going to do it, or no, I wasn't going to do it. So this is actually a good point. I was going to mention this. Bundan bahsedecektim. I just used the same subject as you noticed. I was going to mention this, but question words are open-end questions. Like you can ask what, then it could be anything. It has an open end. But question particle, mı at the end, they are yes or no questions. Like will you do this? Bunu yapacak mısın? Evet, yapacağım. Hayır, yapmayacağım. Bunu yapacak mıydın? Were you going to do this? Evet, yapacaktım. Hayır, yapmayacaktım. They're always yes or no answers. Also, one more important thing to remind is question words and question particle are not used together. Okay, if you use question word, you can't use question particle in the same sentence. It is even against the rules. It also doesn't even work. Like if I try it here, nerede yapacaktım mı? I have to move it, but now it doesn't work. Nerede yapacaktım mı? There are some adjective cases where you will use it. But for now, we will keep it simple. Just remember, don't combine question word and question particles. Okay, so we are slowly moving into seeing more examples. I will show you more examples with these conjugations, and finally I will ask your examples. So you will be given an opportunity to practice these subjects. But before that, I want to talk about this boosting vocabulary. So there are these boosting, I call them boosting because they boost the meaning of it. Az kalsın, az daha, neredeyse. All of them, all these three basically mean almost, but almost in the sense of this almost happened with a verb. If you use it with a noun, like almost 10 students, in that case, only the neredeyse would work. Neredeyse 10 öğrenci. But if you use it with a verb, neredeyse oluyordu, neredeyse olacaktı, neredeyse düşecekti, az daha düşecekti, az kalsın düşecekti. Almost fell but didn't. It was going to fall but didn't. So it was going to fall but didn't. Glitching, yes. Yes, we put the Y. Not this time, not because there are two vowels next to each other. It's more about the etymology of the question particle. So the original form of the question is, or the suffix is idi, not the. So it was idi. In some old books, you can see mı idim. You can see it spelled this way. But this is outdated. We don't say it this way anymore. Maybe some old people, or I don't know, some people may prefer saying it, but it will sound really weird. So when you connect them together, you change this to Y. Mıydım. It is about the history of this idi, the original form of the suffix. Yeah, exactly. Okay. And we have seen our boosting words. And finally, oh, that's funny. I already talked about this. Finally, let's talk about my examples on the left and then your examples on the right. Tamamdır. Alright. Ben de size teşekkür ederim geldiğiniz için. I also thank you guys for joining, for coming. Kendinize iyi bakın. Take care. İyi akşamlar.